Do you regret not acting earlier to call for him to drop out, given the warning signs? Would that have given you a leg up here with Jackson?
No, I don't think so.
I'm slightly stunned Bernie actually said that on national TV. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, your home for nonpartisan and independent commentary and analysis on politics, media, internet culture, and more. We're going to check in with another one of the big Sunday shows, this time Face the Nation on CBS News with Margaret Brennan. She just had on Senator Bernie Sanders, and she asked him about Graham Platner, the scandal-plagued candidate he endorsed, who was forced to drop out, and some of his other endorsements, and it got testy. And Bernie said some stuff. He doubled down on some things that really shocking and frankly disgusting to me, but we'll go through it all. But it's important to note that Bernie Sanders is very much now one of the most popular and ideologically leading figures in the Democratic Party. If you look at the actual voter base and who they support and who they agree with, and it's shifted a lot, even from back in 2016 when he ran against Hillary Clinton and he was like considered the fringe. Well, the party has moved towards him, and he is now kind of one of the focal points of the party, and his democratic socialism agenda and kind of far left worldview has really kind of becoming the new center of gravity for Democrats. So that's the important context here. But he did endorse Graham Platner, who then dropped out after facing credible accusations of sexual abuse and physical violence from ex-girlfriends. But the order there is important, and we'll come to that. Bernie has no regrets, apparently, according to this interview. Let's watch.
You were an early supporter in Maine of Graham Platner. You helped him rise. Do you regret not acting earlier to call for him to drop out, given the warning signs? Would that have given you a leg up here with Jackson?
No, I don't think so. When we heard the serious allegations made against them, I wanted to get on the phone. I wanted to talk to him. I did. I asked, along with virtually all his supporters, that he should get out of the race, and he did.
This is actually very, very nefarious from Bernie Sanders, because the story he just recounted there is not true. First of all, God forbid we take a little bit of accountability and say, yeah, I probably shouldn't have endorsed the guy who had a Nazi tattoo and lied about it for years and wrote all this psychotic stuff on Reddit. Maybe him being emotionally unstable and abusive, allegedly, was actually kind of foreseeable and predictable if I'd given it a little more due diligence. But no. The accountability is not in the room with us. No sort of a reflection of any kind. But then Bernie is not being honest here. Because the first time an ex-girlfriend came forward and accused Graham Platner of physical abuse, that was Lindsay Fifield, who is she worked in conservative political think tank world for a long time, and she knew Graham Platner, and she dated Graham Platner when he lived in D.C. and was a bartender. When she came forward and accused him very credibly with some corroboration, and it's confirmed that they dated. So this is not, some random person like who can never even prove they met the person, just a wild accusation. This was a corroborated, substantiated allegation of physical abuse from an ex-girlfriend, of like grabbing her and locking her in a room and all this crazy, disturbing stuff. Bernie stood by him through that. Yes, Bernie did not withdraw his endorsement for that. He was like, I don't really care. That was his approach. And then a woman who was aligned with Graham Platner politically came forward and accused him of sexual assault. And then the curtains closed on his candidacy, and people like Bernie pulled their support. But you would think that now at least they would admit they should have believed Lindsay Fifield, and they should have not have just dismissed her because she worked with the Heritage Foundation or what have you, as if that means she couldn't be, telling the truth about what happened to her, or as if that dismisses everything. No, actually, he only cared once a progressive woman made an accusation, I guess. It's incredibly revisionistic and gross stuff from Bernie Sanders, especially in the context of him being one of many Democrats who argued that Brett Kavanaugh should not be confirmed to the Supreme Court back in 2018, I believe, because of an accusation of sexual assault from a woman, Christine Blasey Ford, who could not even remember the year this happened, who could not prove she met Brett Kavanaugh ever. Like, it was a total he said, she said. And I don't know what's in that woman's heart. I don't know what really happened, but it was an accusation essentially devoid of any meaningful evidence. And yet Bernie Sanders thought that it was credible and took it seriously enough to demand that Brett Kavanaugh not be confirmed. And yet his Senate candidate in Maine that he supported had a credible accusation from an ex-girlfriend of physical abuse with corroboration and all sorts of documentation and lots known about this guy's dark struggles. And he did not care. He did not withdraw his endorsement. And now he's trying to act like, oh, well, I did the right thing. You absolutely did not. And you got caught about it. So that's what bothers me about so much of this is so many of these Democrats were so deeply cynical with the whole Graham Platner thing and then just suddenly flipped on a dime, which I guess it's better late than never, right? Sure. But don't then act like you were doing the right thing all along when you were absolutely not. That is not going to fly with me. And I think most people who've been following along will just feel gaslit by that. Now, I do find it funny because you think maybe this follow-up question would be kind of predictable, but Margaret asked Senator Sanders about vetting for the other candidates he's endorsed, and he suddenly seemed extremely uncomfortable. Let's watch.
You are confident that with your endorsements, these other candidates have been fully vetted?
Well, look, I think there are hundreds of candidates. I don't know who has been, quote unquote, fully vetted.
Well, you just mentioned two of them.
All I know is the candidates. Well, all I know is, Margaret, that the candidates that we are supporting are standing up for the working class of this country.
Oh, okay. So she asks, so, hey, all the other candidates you've endorsed, surely they've been thoroughly vetted, right? And he's like, well, they agree with me politically, and they want to do the policies I think are good. That was not the question, sir. That wasn't even in the same neighborhood as the question. So you'd have thought he might have seen that one coming because it's kind of the obvious follow-up when you get asked about, somebody you endorsed and campaigned with and so heavily supported who had to drop out because he was not properly vetted, obviously. When you are a campaign or political operative and you are considering candidates and candidates are running in primaries, it's like you're supposed to make sure that you know about all the skeletons under the closet. And clearly there were many skeletons that they had not thoroughly researched or vetted about Graham Platner. And so it's a very fair question to be like, surely you've improved this or you've gone and double checked about the other people you endorse. He's like, well, I know they want socialized healthcare. And that's all that matters to me. Oh, so you don't actually care about any of the things you claim to care about believe women and all this stuff. It was all just, politically expedient at the time. And as long as they're going to agree with you on policy, you don't actually care that much. Interesting. I mean, I guess that's kind of what people have done with Trump and the Republican Party and with others. I mean, Trump's been accused of all sorts of horrific wrongdoing. I don't think anybody could argue he's demonstrated moral character throughout his affairs and all sorts of personal shenanigans over the years. And Republicans have basically decided that they don't really care. They don't think character is disqualifying or qualifying because they think he has the right ideas for the country and he'll, secure the border and he'll stop our jobs being shipped overseas and what have you. And so they have essentially rallied around the idea that it no longer really matters. And I disagree with that. I actually think character is very important in a political candidate because I believe that it is an insight into how you will then act under pressure, right? Your true nature or how you've dealt with stresses or problems in the past gives us some insight into whether or not you will act in a moral or just way when you are now in a position of power and then things don't go to plan or hits the fan in some sort of way. So I believe character matters, and I apply that across the board. But Republicans have kind of stopped pretending they care about that. Democrats still claim to. And that's part of why the Graham Platner thing is so bothersome to me, because it really shows how thin that veneer is or that facade is for a lot of these people who, were all about the believe women and anyone, Brett Kavanaugh has an accusation with no evidence whatsoever of a meaningful degree. He's got to go. He's got to go. Oh, but Graham Platner, who could have seen this coming? I don't know. And those first accusations from conservative woman, we don't care. We didn't care about those. But then, it got to a point where he had harmed a liberal or a progressive leftist woman. That's too much. It's like, how do you not just choke on the stench of the hypocrisy there, right? It's like you would think that would surround you like a gas, and you would feel that seeping into you, and you'd feel shame seeping into you, saying those things and doing those things. But I guess they're truly shameless at this point. One more thing while we're talking about the Maine Democrats. I want to play you this clip from the Maine Democrats getting together to nominate Troy Jackson, their replacement for Graham Platner, who knows if he's that well vetted. I guess we'll see what comes out about him. But they had to open it up with a land acknowledgement, which if you're not new here, if you've been around this channel or my commentary, you know this is like one of my pet peeves. This performative virtue signaling nonsense. Anyway, let's watch.
I want to pause first to recognize that we are meeting today in the unceded homeland of the Penobscot Nation. The Maine Democratic Party acknowledges that the Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot tribal nations have long been stewards of the places where most of us live and work, and that they are entitled to recognition as distinct sovereign entities.
You guys are so stunning and so brave. Oh, give yourself a round of applause for that, please. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Give it back or shut the f*** up. Really, it's crazy. They are opening up this performative virtue signaling stuff with, we acknowledge all these tribes that claim this land and haven't ceded us. Anyway, we're going to just keep it and keep doing our thing on it. But we acknowledge how terrible it was done to them. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm sure in many of these cases, the tribes were treated wrongly, were treated terribly, had things taken away from them from a long time ago. That was, in many cases, just the way of the world through conquest. And thankfully, through civilization, we don't live in a time like that anymore. But I don't believe for a second that they're somehow spiritually entitled to these lands or anything, or that any of these people doing this actually give a shit about it at all. Genuinely, I think he could have read off a list of random syllables that weren't actually tribal names, but just kind of sounded like it. And that whole room would have just clapped and applauded because they don't care about this. They don't know about anything about this. It's just pure performative virtue signaling. If you actually wanted to help Native American people or indigenous people, whatever the politically correct word is these days, there are real issues facing their communities. There are real problems, and there's different ways, I'm sure, in the policy world to address them. But no, let's just do a performative, pat ourselves on the back and read off a list of places, people and groups that claim this land and haven't ceded it. Right? They note that. They still claim that it's their land, and we're going to acknowledge them, but we're not going to give it back. You see how that's almost worse than not acknowledging them? At least to me, and actually many Native and Indigenous leaders have spoken out against these kinds of land acknowledgements, because even they find them to be just performative and trite. And I'm sorry, but this is 2026. Nobody wants this anymore. And the Democratic Party is still, in its official capacity, doing this kind of performative virtue signaling BS. Yikes. Just yikes. That's all I got to say about that. But you guys will let me know what you think. This podcast was recorded on the ancestral homelands of the... No, it wasn't. I don't care. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Hit the like button. Just me laughing at myself. No big deal. And we'll be back with more real soon.